So today, we need to talk about what ESPN said about Caitlin Clark, because I've seen people reacting to it like there's some kind of hidden agenda here. And honestly, I don't think there's any malice at all. But at the same time, the way they're talking about Caitlin Clark is just weird. Let's be real for a second. Caitlin Clark absolutely brought a massive number of people into women's basketball. That's not debatable. Yes, women's college basketball existed before her. Yes, programs like UConn were always big. Certain teams were relevant. But what Caitlin Clark did was different. She chose Iowa. She didn't go to a traditional powerhouse. At the same time, you had Juju going to USC when they weren't dominant yet. Now you got players like Michaela Blakes at Vanderbilt, Audi Crooks pulling real numbers, and suddenly women's college basketball is booming. And it's not just 2 or 3 teams anymore. As good as UConn is, let's be honest, they had a cakewalk schedule. That's not their fault. Notre Dame lost players. USC dealt with injuries. Juju went down. None of that is on UConn, but it does matter when we're talking about context. Now, ESPN used a phrase that Caitlin Clark is a gateway drug to women's sports. And I actually agree with that in a very specific way. People come for Caitlin Clark, and they stay because they like the rest of the product. The reason that boost has been more noticeable in college basketball than in non-Caitlin Clark WNBA games is simple. College media isn't constantly tearing her down. If you're an Iowa fan, you watch Iowa. If you're a UConn fan, you watch UConn. People talk basketball. The conversation is healthier. And I'll be honest, I wish my YouTube channel did better on college hoops because I want to talk more about players like Michaela Blakes. Now, ESPN's VP of Women's Sports Programming basically said, if Caitlin brought you in, we're going to keep you here. And I don't take that as condescending at all. I genuinely enjoy women's college basketball because players stay multiple years. I've always believed this. Ball is ball. A basketball going through a hoop is the same no matter who's playing. I used to sit at a terrible desk job, data entering all day, watching FIBA youth tournaments on my phone. U16S, U18S, U20S, didn't matter. I just needed basketball on. And yeah, I'll admit it, I have an unhealthy obsession with basketball. Luckily, it's also my job. Caitlin Clark didn't just pull me into watching the WNBA. She pulled me into creating content about it. And I stayed because it's enjoyable. Now, people point to ratings and say, even when Caitlin was injured, the WNBA had its most watched regular season and playoffs. But let's be honest why. The Indiana Fever had way more nationally televised games. Instead of playing 2 playoff games, they played 8. Of course, total viewership went up. If Caitlin Clark games average around 2.2 million viewers, Fever games without her were still around 1.4 million. Non-Fever games were lower, maybe 650 to 800K, but that's still massively better than where the league used to be. That's growth. People came for Caitlin Clark. They stayed because the product is good. And why couldn't we just say that from the start? A rising tide lifts all boats. Here's the thing though. Caitlin Clark isn't suddenly going to make me watch the NWSL. That's not how sports fandom works. This weird idea that you have to support all women's sports if you watch one is ridiculous. It's sports. I support what I enjoy. The WNBA is summer basketball, and it's better than summer league. General sports fans are watching now, and that's the key. Convert general sports fans. And yes, I think the FIFA World Cup will cut into WNBA viewership in 2026, especially if it's in the US. That's normal. What I hate is this charity case framing of women's sports. I don't watch to be nice. I watch because it's competitive. Yes, bad WNBA games are bad. Some are genuinely awful. But guess what? Every sport has bad games. Maybe 10% of games suck. That's universal. Now, ESPN also talked about something basic but important. Pronouncing names correctly. It's Breanna Stewart, not Brianna. It's Stephen Curry, not Stephen. That matters. They're launching Women's Sports Sunday in a former Sunday night baseball slot. If it works, it works. At least they're finally giving Caitlin Clark proper credit. Because a few years ago, ESPN was blaming fans for ruining the WNBA. That narrative has clearly shifted. And maybe I'm naive. I'll admit that. I just love sports. I'll watch a WNBA game over an NBA game sometimes. No hesitation. Maybe that makes me the minority. I don't know. But I don't think Caitlin Clark magically makes people love every women's sport. Just like Michael Jordan didn't make people care about bad expansion teams. What has happened is this: women's basketball, especially college, is a better long-term product for casual fans because players stay. And in the WNBA, players care more on a game-by-game basis. Rivalries matter. Stories are easier to follow. And the players themselves deserve credit for that. Caitlin Clark is leading it by a mile, but she's not alone. People now talk seriously about Aya Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu, Paige Buchers, and yes, even before that, Diana Taurasi. That legitimacy didn't exist before. And that's why I agree with ESPN on one thing. The ecosystem is rising. I just can't wait for the day when being a WNBA fan is treated the same as being a tennis fan. Not gendered, not framed as activism, just sports. Anyway, that's my take. I'm glad ESPN finally gave Caitlin Clark her flowers. It really wasn't that hard. See you guys.